Undercover CEO orders a meal at his diner. He stops when he hears the waitress crying in the kitchen. The hum of the lunch crowd buzzed throughout Riverside Diner, a beloved staple in the heart of Chicago. Unbeknownst to everyone, the unassuming customer seated at a back booth was none other than the diner's billionaire owner, David Langford, on an undercover visit to gauge the real pulse of his establishment. Dressed in a casual hoodie and faded jeans, David was about to place his usual order meatloaf and mashed potatoes when a muffled sob drifted out from the kitchen. Something in that cry pierced him to his core, halting him mid-sentence. Little did David know that this fleeting moment of compassion would unravel buried secrets, expose hidden betrayals, and alter not only a desperate waitress's destiny, but also the future of his entire business empire. David Langford was no stranger to success or to secrecy. As the founder and CEO of Langford Ventures, he'd spent 20 years building an empire that stretched from real estate to restaurants, including the iconic Riverside Diner chain. One might expect a man of his wealth to frequent only high-end bistros in downtown Chicago, but David preferred an unadorned authenticity. That's why, for the past month, he'd quietly slipped into various Riverside Diner locations in disguise, determined to see how staff treated just another patron. At 6'2", with a confident stride and graying hair at the temples, David rarely could blend in easily among the hustle. But after years of clandestine visits and well-practiced calm, he'd perfected the art of going unnoticed, well-worn sneakers, a baseball cap pulled low, or occasionally a hoodie that softened his otherwise sharp features. That afternoon, he chose the original Riverside Diner on Ashland Avenue, not far from Wrigley Field. This was the very first location he purchased a decade earlier, a place steeped in personal nostalgia. He wanted to check on rumors of staff shortages, inconsistent service, and a rumored manager who might be abusing power. Yet the moment he sat down, those concerns faded into the background when he heard that heart-wrenching sob from the back. The diner interior sparkled with a mid-century charm, checkerboard floors, red vinyl booths, and the irresistible smell of sizzling bacon. A handful of patrons occupied seats near the front window. The large neon sign reading Riverside Diner buzzed softly, framing the bustling city outside. David quietly took a seat in the far corner, near the swinging door that led to the kitchen. From here, the clatter of pots and pans was audible, as was the occasional banter from the line cooks. He'd studied the menu countless times, of course, but pretended to read it anew. A young waiter, wearing a name tag, Omar, drifted over, greeting him with a friendly grin. David put on his best regular Joe voice and ordered the day's special meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy, plus a cup of black coffee. Omar jotted down the request with professional courtesy. No one seemed the least bit suspicious. That's how David preferred it. His entire plan hinged on seeing genuine behavior. As he leaned back to wait for the meal, David was about to slip into a routine check of the staff's mood. Then he heard it, a soft, stifled cry floating from behind the kitchen door. It was so faint, yet it cut through the lively chatter like a razor. Something was clearly wrong. He glanced around, noticing no one else seemed to have caught the sound. With concern gnawing at him, David decided to investigate. After all, this was his diner. If an employee was in distress, he needed to find out why. Before David could stand, however, a commanding voice boomed from the kitchen area. "Anna, quit slacking and get back out here." The tone was harsh, laced with impatience. Instantly, the sobbing hushed, as if someone had pressed a mute button on heartbreak. He watched as a young waitress emerged through the swinging door, wiping her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself. She wore the standard Riverside Diner uniform, pale blue blouse, black slacks, and a fraying name tag that read Anna. The red-rimmed eyes and forced smile made David's chest tighten. She looked as if she'd just faced a personal crisis. With no time to breathe, Anna hurried to the booth across from David's to deliver a slice of pie to an older couple. Her voice trembled slightly, but she tried to maintain a cheerful tone. "Your apple pie. Enjoy." Then, turning, she almost collided with David's gaze. He offered her a gentle nod, hoping to convey some silent reassurance. But Anna quickly averted her eyes, as though embarrassed that a customer might have witnessed her vulnerable moment. While she hustled away to the next table, the diner manager, a stocky man named Greg, stepped out of the kitchen, scanning the room with an air of self-importance. David recognized him from an internal HR report referencing disciplinary complaints. A prickle of unease told him that Greg might be a source of trouble, and that sobbing might be a symptom of something far deeper. Within minutes, Omar returned with David's meal, a plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans on the side. The portion was generous, the aroma comforting. David nodded his thanks, but his focus lingered on Anna, who flitted from table to table, her forced smile etched in place. Greg stationed himself behind the counter, adopting a stern posture, occasionally barking out instructions to the staff. David subtly observed interactions. Anna brought an extra spoon for a toddler at a corner table, but Greg shot her a glare as she passed him. She lowered her gaze, as though apologizing for even existing. It was time to gather more intel. David had come here to see how the diner truly operated, and he suspected he'd found the crux of the problem. He took a casual bite of his meatloaf, delicious as always, then beckoned Anna over. She approached warily, as if bracing for criticism or a complaint. David mustered a warm smile. "Excuse me, Anna, right? Could I get a refill on coffee?" He glanced at her name tag, pretending to just notice her name. "The food's great, by the way." She forced a small grin. "Of course." While she filled his cup from a nearby carafe, David gently asked, "Everything okay? You seem upset." For a moment, panic flickered in her eyes. She shook her head quickly. "I'm fine. Just a long day, that's all. Let me know if you need anything else." Then she retreated before he could press further. David's instincts told him that Anna needed help she might not even know how to request. He mulled over options, approached Greg directly, or tried to speak to Anna privately. Confronting the manager might scare Anna or put her job at risk, so David decided on a subtler approach. Finishing his meal, David quietly slipped a crisp $50 bill under his plate as a tip, far more than standard, but he wanted Anna to sense kindness. He also left a note on a small napkin. "If you ever need someone to listen, I'm here, D." Then he rose, put on his jacket, and headed for the exit. As he passed the register, he glimpsed Anna retrieving dishes from his table. She paused upon seeing the tip and the note, eyes widening. Greg was busy berating a cook, so he missed the exchange. Anna's gaze flicked to David, who offered a discreet wave and an encouraging half-smile. In truth, David wasn't sure if leaving a note was wise or if it would even change anything. He only knew he couldn't stand by while an employee, someone in his extended corporate family, quietly suffered. Although he still had no direct evidence of wrongdoing, that single tearful moment in the kitchen told him enough to suspect a hostile work environment. What David didn't realize was that the storm brewing was far more complicated than just an overbearing manager. Anna's tears were tied to a deeper crisis, and soon events would force David into a position not only as an undercover boss, but also as her fiercest ally. David left the diner and re-entered the waiting limousine. His driver, Charles, glanced at him curiously. "Everything all right, sir?" David exhaled. "Not sure, Charles. The first need to do a bit more digging." He pulled out his phone and texted his head of HR, Elaine Carter. "Please send me any recent complaint reports or staff turnover data, specifically for Riverside Diner #1 Ashland Avenue urgent, D." Elaine responded quickly, "On it. We'll compile and send by EOD." Arriving back at the corporate tower, David immersed himself in a round of board meetings. But the memory of Anna's tear-streaked face haunted him. He'd built Riverside Diner with the ethos of family-friendly service and a supportive environment. The possibility that a manager or some internal policy was causing real harm to staff gutted him. By late afternoon, Elaine delivered a digital folder. David skimmed the documents. A pattern emerged. Multiple staff had quit within the last quarter, citing conflicts with manager Greg Tuttle. Phrases like harassment, unprofessional, and verbal abuse jumped off the pages. One complaint from a former waitress mentioned excessive demands, intimidation, and refusing schedule adjustments for personal emergencies. David's anger simmered. He prided himself on fair labor practices. This manager had slipped through cracks, or worse, twisted local control to create a toxic atmosphere. With a determined frown, David vowed to return to the diner soon, this time with more direct scrutiny. Meanwhile, back at the diner, Anna found the note from David. She nervously tucked it into her apron, heart fluttering at the thought that a customer had noticed her distress. She'd only worked here a few months, but they'd been grueling. Manager Greg Tuttle was mercurial. He'd shower false praise on a favorite one day, then unleash harsh words the next. Anna had landed this job out of desperation. Her mother needed expensive medication, and Anna was behind on rent. She had nowhere else to turn after dropping out of a local college to support her family. Her shift ended at 7 p.m. She lingered in the storeroom, counting tips, lamenting how her entire day's wages might not even cover half of next week's bills. Sighing, she recalled the kind man who gave her that $50 stip. She reread his note. "If you ever need someone to listen, I'm here. D." She had no last name or phone number, just a letter. How could I even reach him? She wondered aloud. The idea of confiding in a stranger was terrifying, but something about his gentle eyes and the sincerity of his note gave her a flicker of hope. If only she had a path to better days. Her thoughts were cut off by a bark from Greg. "Anna, you clocking out or squatting here all night?" She startled, quickly pocketing the note. Another wave of dread filled her, for now she'd remain trapped under Greg's thumb unless something changed soon. Days turned into a week. David made time to discreetly interview other staff members from that diner, scheduling them for routine corporate feedback sessions at the headquarters. Their accounts mirrored the HR complaints. Greg consistently belittled waiters, threatened to cut hours if they didn't comply with demanding schedules, and sometimes withheld tip share. One staffer confessed that Greg rummaged through tip jars, pocketing a portion for store fees, which staff suspected was just personal pocketing. Indignation welled in David. This man was not only unprofessional, but also stealing from his employees, an absolute violation of Riverside Diner's code of ethics. Yet David needed concrete proof to legally terminate Greg. He decided an unannounced inspection might do, potentially catching him red-handed. That, or he could talk to Anna, who seemed too scared to open up in the diner's environment. One late evening, David sat in his office, scanning the city skyline from the top floor. He remembered that flicker of heartbreak in Anna's eyes. She seemed kind, hard-working, yet burdened by something. Maybe she had evidence, or at least insights. David resolved to approach her carefully, outside of Greg's watchful presence. Dialing a contact, David arranged for a private investigator from Vance and Associates to gather further intel. If they could catch Greg in a wrongdoing or build a watertight case, the diner's staff would be free from his tyranny, and hopefully Anna's tears would no longer stain the diner's kitchen floors. Anna soldiered through her shifts, each day feeling heavier than the last. The meager wages, constant stress from Greg, and her mother's deteriorating health pressed on her spirit. She dreaded going home to her small apartment, where piles of unpaid bills reminded her of her precarious situation. She'd managed to pay for her mother's medication by skimping on groceries for herself. Late one Tuesday night, Anna found herself alone in the diner's locker area, rummaging for her coat. Greg had just left, after berating her for taking too long wiping tables. The only solace was that tomorrow she had a rare morning off to drive her mother to a doctor's appointment at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She breathed a sigh of relief. Exiting the diner, she nearly collided with a tall figure waiting by the side entrance. Startled, she stepped back. As the figure moved under the dim overhead light, she recognized the man from before, the kind customer who'd left the note. He wore the same casual hoodie and an earnest expression. "Sorry to surprise you," David said gently. "I just wanted to check on you. You seemed upset last time. I left a note, but realized you had no way to contact me." Anna's eyes widened. I remember. But why?" David offered a small smile. "Because you deserve better than whatever's making you cry in that kitchen." At first, Anna hesitated to trust this stranger who claimed concern. But something about his gentle demeanor and the memory of that generous tip disarmed her. She glanced at the dark street behind them. Traffic whooshed by occasionally, adding a protective layer of white noise. "I appreciate your concern," she managed softly. "But it's complicated. I don't want to lose my job." David nodded. "I understand. I'm not here to put you at risk. But if there's any issue with the diner, especially something unethical, maybe I can help." His phrasing was careful, masking the fact that he outright owned the entire chain. He wanted her honest account, not a guarded one given to the boss. Anna sighed, tears threatening again. "My manager, Greg. He's making life miserable for me and others. He takes a portion of our tips. If we object, he threatens fewer shifts or tells us he'll fire us." Some staff left. "I have no safety net, so I can't afford to quit. And my mum's sick, so I need every penny." David's jaw tightened. The rumors and HR complaints were true. "That's horrible," he said quietly. "Does no one stand up to him?" Anna shook her head, voice shaking. "He covers his tracks. We're all too scared. He says we can't prove anything." David's eyes glinted with resolve. "We can. Just trust me." Anna felt a wave of relief, yet fear still pricked her heart. "How can I trust you?" she whispered, hugging her arms to her chest against the chilly air. David took a moment, considering how much to reveal. He decided to give her partial truth. "I've been investigating issues at this diner. I'm connected with the owners, in a sense, and want to fix wrongdoing. If Greg is stealing from staff, that's illegal. And if he's harassing employees, we can stop him." She studied him by the faint light. You do realize it could get me fired if he finds out." "I talked to you," David frowned. "I promised to protect your identity. And once we gather enough proof, he won't be your manager anymore." A tear slid down Anna's cheek as relief and anxiety tangled. "I need the job, but I can't keep living like this. If you can truly help, I'm in." David exhaled, offering a small, supportive smile. "Thank you for trusting me. Let's meet tomorrow after you finish your mum's appointment, maybe for coffee. You can tell me more specifics. I'll figure out a plan from there." After exchanging phone numbers, they parted ways. David felt a surge of determination. This was no longer just an undercover check, this was personal. The next morning, Anna drove her mother to Northwestern Memorial, where the staff administered some routine tests. The waiting room's sterile walls and hushed atmosphere weighed on her. She tried focusing on comforting her mother, who, despite the pain, managed a brave smile. Anna's phone buzzed with a text from David. "Hope all is well. Let me know when you're free to meet Dee." Her heart fluttered. She typed a quick reply. "Give me an hour. Then we can meet at the Green Bean Coffee Shop on Michigan Avenue by noon." Anna settled her mother back home with a neighbor babysitting. She headed to the Green Bean, anxiety prickled. She didn't even know David's full name, just that initial D. Yet she hoped this might be the break she needed. Walking inside the cozy coffee shop, she spotted him at a corner table, wearing a subdued grey jacket. He greeted her with a warm nod, offering to pay for her latte. She accepted, though feeling self-conscious. Once both had drinks, they sat across from each other in a quiet nook. David leaned forward, voice low. "Okay, let's talk specifics. If we can show proof of tip theft, wage violations or harassment, we can escalate it quickly. Do you know if Greg uses any record, or do we rely on testimonies?" Anna swallowed. "He sometimes makes staff sign weird deductions forms. We have a tip jar, but he logs what he claims are store overhead costs. We suspect it's not official." David scribbled notes, determined to craft a strategy. As Anna described the ordeal in detail, David listened intently. She recounted how Greg singled her out for extra scolding, forced her to take undesirable shifts, and once threatened that if she refused a late-night close, he'd cut her hours in half. Another co-worker, Tanya, was forced to do double shifts without proper overtime pay. Some staff alleged that Greg pocketed up to 20% of the night tips. The environment was toxic, yet local HR reps never visited in person, and fear kept employees silent. David's anger burned. This was everything Riverside Diner stood against. He realized how Greg's intimidation worked so effectively, especially with employees who desperately needed the job. "It ends now," David stated firmly. "We'll gather evidence photos of tip records, statements from staff, if possible, maybe audio recordings of his threats. Once we have enough, I'll bring it to corporate compliance." Anna blinked, surprised by his confidence. "But if corporate is so big, how can you be sure they'll care?" He took a breath, carefully choosing words. "I'm certain. The Riverside Diner brand was founded on fair treatment. If top brass sees undisputable evidence, Greg is finished. They might even face a lawsuit if they don't act. But trust me, they will." She nodded, tears of gratitude forming. "I'll do my best. This means a lot." David gently placed a hand on hers. "You deserve respect and safety. Let's fix this together." Over the next 2 weeks, Anna discreetly documented incidents at the diner. She used her phone to snap pictures of the tip jar ledger Greg maintained, noticing suspicious changes in figures from one day to the next. She recorded short voice memos each time Greg spewed intimidation. One day, she managed to catch Greg scolding Tanya about "shut your mouth or lose your shift." Another time, he snarled at Anna for daring to question his method of distributing tips. Meanwhile, David's private investigator, Vance and Associates, observed from outside, watching for any sign of wrongdoing like unrecorded cash, stash, or extra-legal shipping of supplies. They found that Greg occasionally sold diner supplies to a neighboring establishment, pocketing the funds. The puzzle pieces came together. Anna funneled all her evidence to David, who compiled it neatly. With each new revelation, David's resolve hardened. He realized not only had Greg created a culture of fear, but he was also embezzling. This was a serious criminal offense. Yet, in the midst of collecting evidence, the staff sensed that something was stirring. A few long-time employees quietly banded together with Anna, grateful for a chance to fight back. But fear lingered that Greg might discover their rebellion. If he did, retribution could be brutal. The clock was ticking. One late afternoon, as Anna finished her shift, Greg called her into his cramped office at the back of the diner. The moment she walked in, she sensed trouble. Greg sat with arms folded, an ominous glint in his eye. He tapped a sheet of paper, presumably the schedule. "Heard you've been talking with others about my management style," Greg sneered. "You got complaints?" You come to me. Because let me tell you, you cause any trouble, you'll be out on your ass. Understand? Anna felt her stomach lurch. She forced a neutral expression. 1. I don't know what you mean. Greg narrowed his gaze. Cut the crap. I see you whispering with the new dishwasher, comparing tips or something. Don't forget who's boss. If you want hours, you do as I say. Otherwise, he smirked coldly, plenty of desperate people want your job. Her hands trembled. She realized how precarious her situation was. I just do my job, that's all. He snorted, scribbling something on the schedule. Starting tomorrow, you're on the closing shift all week. If you can't hack it, you're gone. Then he waved dismissively. Get out. Fighting tears, Anna escaped the office. Her heart pounded with fear. She texted David in a panic. He's on to me, threatening me, not sure how long I can last. David read Anna's desperate message while in the middle of a meeting at Langford Ventures. Apologizing to his executives, he stepped out into the hallway, heart racing. Greg's suspicion could ruin everything, he thought. They needed to move fast. He texted back, hang in there. We have enough. I'll handle it. Promise. He swiftly dialed HR Director Elaine. Elaine, it's time to coordinate with legal, he said, voice tight. We have strong evidence of theft and harassment by manager Greg Tuttle at Riverside Diner #1. I want him suspended immediately, pending an investigation. Also, gather a team for an unannounced audit. We'll confront him tomorrow. Elaine was startled by his directness, but agreed. Typically, corporate would schedule these audits with notice, but David insisted on secrecy. He wanted no chance for Greg to destroy or alter records. That evening, David texted Anna that the corporate team was stepping in. She responded with relief. Still, anxiety coiled within her. If Greg got wind of the surprise inspection, he might lash out. She decided to keep her head down, finishing her shift in silence. Her only comfort was that soon, hopefully, she wouldn't have to endure Greg's tyranny anymore. David, meanwhile, quietly arranged to attend that unannounced audit in person, still undercover, but ready to reveal himself if necessary. The following morning dawned grey and drizzly, a fitting backdrop for the tense confrontation that lay ahead. A small entourage from corporate HR and compliance arrived at the diner's door at 9 a.m. Surprising Greg, who typically rolled in by mid-morning, the staff already on shift looked on curiously as the group introduced themselves. Greg, half a bagel in hand, scowled. What's this about? We weren't expecting corporate until next quarter. HR Director Elaine Carter, an impeccably dressed woman with a no-nonsense air, stepped forward. We're conducting a routine compliance audit, Mr. Tuttle. We'll need access to your financial records, tip logs, and staff schedules from the past 6 months. Greg's expression darkened, but he forced a grin. Sure, no problem. We run a tidy ship here, he lied, leading them to his office. The group of 4, including a compliance officer and an IT specialist, followed. Meanwhile, David arrived incognito, wearing the same casual hoodie. He quietly slipped into a booth near the back, keen to observe. He watched Anna, who offered him a tense nod. Her eyes flicked to Greg's closed office door, fear swirling. David gave her a subtle thumbs up. The plan was set in motion. Either Greg would comply, or the evidence they had would overshadow any false compliance. The moment of truth loomed. Inside Greg's office, Elaine Carter wasted no time requesting the tip distribution log, staff timesheets, and any deduction records. Greg fiddled with his file cabinet, pulling out disorganized folders. It's all here, he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. He hoped he could hide the suspicious entries or blame them on staff errors. But the compliance officer systematically compared the physical records to digital backups from corporate. It discovered discrepancies. Certain lines had been altered or never uploaded. Then Elaine found multiple staff deduction forms with no official signature or corporate code. Greg tried to shrug it off. I must have forgot to forward them. The staff agreed to these fees for uniforms, breakages and so on. Elaine's brow furrowed. That's not standard policy. We require corporate-approved forms for uniform charges or breakage. These look unofficial. Also, we see numerous staff pay stubs with tip shares drastically lower than daily receipts indicate. Greg forced a laugh. Diners can be inconsistent, you know. Maybe staff miscounted or took personal breaks. Hard to track everything. Elaine and the compliance officer exchanged telling looks. The mounting evidence spelled trouble. Meanwhile, out in the dining area, David sipped coffee calmly, though his heart pounded. He texted Anna, "It's happening. Stand by." She responded with a shaky thumbs-up emoji. An hour into the audit, frustration radiated from Greg's office. He raised his voice a few times, claiming he was being unfairly targeted. Elaine remained calm, itemizing each suspicious entry. Meanwhile, staff who arrived for midday shifts were quietly pulled aside to confirm or deny certain details. Many, emboldened by the corporate presence, confessed how Greg manipulated tip jars and threatened retaliation. Each testimony further sealed Greg's fate. By noon, the diner's atmosphere crackled with tension. Customers noticed the unusual number of suits wandering around. Anna maintained service, but her nerves fluttered each time Greg stepped out, eyes blazing. Finally, Elaine emerged from the office, scanning the diner. She spotted David in his booth. Casting a discreet look, she nodded. The message was clear. They had enough evidence. David stood, removing the hoodie. This time, he allowed himself to be recognized, stepping forward with an air of authority. Staff gawked in surprise, having no idea that the quiet man was the CEO. Greg, who had just followed Elaine into the dining area, froze in his tracks upon seeing David stride forward. "Who are you?" Greg demanded, brow furrowing in confusion. He sensed something was off. David's voice resonated with quiet power. "I'm David Langford, owner of Riverside Diner." "We need to talk, Greg." A hush fell. Anna, standing by the counter, nearly dropped a coffee pot. Her eyes widened. So D was David Langford, the big boss. The staff exchanged stunned glances, some with faint smiles of relief. Greg's face blanched. "You're the—" he stammered, glancing around for support. "I didn't know you were coming." David's gaze was steely. "That's the point of an undercover visit. And now, Mr. Tuttle, we have compelling evidence of tip theft, harassment, and unauthorized deductions. We're placing you under immediate suspension pending a formal review. You must leave the premises." Greg's eyes bulged. "Wait, this is a setup. I've run this place for years. The staff are lazy, incompetent." "I was just enforcing discipline." Elaine stepped in, brandishing the documented proofs. "We have recorded statements from multiple employees. We also see glaring irregularities in your financial records. This is no misunderstanding. Security will escort you out." Greg's indignation flared. He pointed at Anna. "This is your doing, you little snitch. You'll regret this." David advanced, an edge in his tone. "Enough. Don't threaten my employee. Leave now or face trespassing charges." Without a choice, Greg grabbed his coat, cursing under his breath. The moment he exited, staff exhaled collectively. Karma had struck hard. The oppressor was finally dethroned. A palpable sense of liberation flooded the diner. Some employees clapped softly in relief. Others simply stood in stunned silence. Anna leaned against a booth, trembling with the rush of adrenaline. She locked eyes with David, who offered a reassuring nod. Elaine stepped to the center of the room, addressing the staff. "We understand this has been a difficult environment. Effective immediately, Greg Tuttle is suspended, likely terminated pending legal steps. We'll appoint an interim manager. If you have concerns or wrongdoing to report, we encourage you to speak to us now or email corporate HR. There will be no reprisals. A wave of applause erupted. The tension from months of fear dissolved like morning mist under the sun. Some employees approached, tearful with gratitude, telling David and Elaine about the relief they felt. Meanwhile, David's heart glowed with satisfaction. He'd done what a responsible CEO should do, protect his workforce from exploitation. Anna quietly approached David, tears shining. "Thank you," she whispered. "I can't believe this is real." He shook his head. "Thank you for trusting me. Without your courage, we might never have caught him. You're safe now." She wiped her eyes, smiling. "Feels like I can finally breathe." The diner's future looked brighter, though the story wasn't quite finished. Greg Tuttle's wrath would have consequences, and Anna's personal struggles remained. But for this triumphant moment, justice had prevailed. News traveled fast through the Riverside Diner chain that a top manager had been fired for misconduct. Corporate hammered out statements about zero tolerance for tip theft, re-emphasizing the brand's commitment to fair labor practices. Many staff across other locations cheered. Some who'd left because of Greg's bullying even considered reapplying. David spent the next days personally overseeing the reorganization of the Ashland Avenue location. He assigned a trusted senior staffer as interim manager, while HR scouted for a permanent replacement. He visited the diner daily, ensuring morale was on the upswing. Freed from Greg's oppression, employees found a new sense of unity. However, behind the scenes, Greg Tuttle brooded. Furious at being set up, he swore revenge. He had nothing to lose now. Rumor suggested he'd begun forging a malicious plan. A few staffers reported receiving threatening texts from an unknown number. Anna, in particular, worried. She began leaving her shift with a co-worker for safety. David quietly assigned security to watch the diner during closing times, not wanting to take chances. Meanwhile, Anna's personal life remained overshadowed by her mother's condition. The medication bills loomed. David noticed her exhaustion. Though his original mission was to fix diner issues, he realized he also wanted to help Anna as a friend. She'd risked everything for the truth. Now he sought a way to repay her loyalty. One evening, David found Anna wiping counters after the dinner rush. The new manager had just locked up. The neon Riverside Diner sign cast a warm glow across the deserted dining area. David approached softly, setting his jacket aside. "You're still here, Anna. It's late," he said. "I told the interim manager to wrap up early." Anna shrugged. "We had a big group of tourists from the Shed Aquarium earlier. I didn't want to leave a mess for the morning." "I guess old habits die hard." She offered a small grin. David gently took the cleaning rag from her hand. "You've done enough. Let's talk." He led her to a booth. She sank into the seat, exhaustion visible. "How's your mum doing?" he asked quietly. A shadow crossed her face. "Not great. We might need a specialist soon. The co-pays are." "Well, I might take a second job, though I'm not sure how." David's heart twisted. "You're going to wear yourself out. Listen, Riverside Diner's Employee Assistance Program can help with medical bills, especially in hardship cases. Would you consider applying?" Anna fiddled with her apron. "I didn't know that was possible." She hesitated. "I'm not a charity case, though. It's complicated." He placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Your family here. Let us help. I'll make sure you get the support you need." Touched by David's sincerity, Anna opened up about her mother's condition, a degenerative heart issue requiring frequent hospital visits. Each pill cost over $100, and her mother needed multiple daily doses. Without them, her mother risked fatal complications. Anna's father had passed years ago, leaving no safety net. She dropped out of college to keep up with the bills. Now, though the immediate crisis with Greg was resolved, The financial strain remained suffocating. David listened intently, feeling a surge of empathy. Anna, you deserve a chance at your own dreams too. If you want to return to college, or at least finish your associate's degree, we can figure that out. Riverside Diner has a tuition assistance program for employees as well. She looked away, tears forming. I can't imagine going back. Not now, he smiled gently. You might be surprised what's possible with the right support. Let me walk you through the program. Or if you'd prefer, I can connect you with Elaine Carter. She'll ensure no one tries to bury your request. Anna's throat tightened with gratitude. I'll think about it. Thank you. In that moment, she realized David's compassion wasn't just a corporate facade. He truly cared. She felt her heart lighten, as if the future wasn't quite so bleak after all. Meanwhile, an undercurrent of looming danger emerged. Greg Tuttle had vanished from the city's public eye, but rumors circulated that he was bitterly seeking revenge, maybe even planning to sue Riverside Diner for wrongful termination. Corporate's lawyers scoffed at that idea, confident their evidence of theft was bulletproof. Nonetheless, David worried that Greg might lash out personally at Anna or other staff who testified. One weekend night, David took Anna aside. I want you to have a panic button app on your phone. Corporate has a security arrangement with a firm. Just in case, he said. She appreciated the caution, though she hoped it was unnecessary. On Monday morning, a letter arrived at the diner addressed to Anna. The handwriting was jagged. She opened it with trembling fingers, discovering a vile note. You cost me everything. Watch your back. Fear clutched her. She showed David, who quietly handed it to security. They recommended she file a police report. She did, though uncertain if it would deter Greg. The next day, David arrived at the diner with private security discreetly stationed outside. Anna tried to keep smiling for customers, but the tension was palpable. David reassured her repeatedly, "You're not alone in this." Yet, each shadowy figure outside made her heart race, wondering if Greg lurked nearby. Despite the threats, Anna pressed on. She'd begun the process of applying for medical support for her mother, and David personally arranged an appointment at a top cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial. The diner's staff morale soared under the new interim manager, a friendly soul named Meredith, who valued collaboration. The relief after Greg's departure was palpable, like a weight lifted from everyone's shoulders. David quietly continued his undercover boss approach at times, but staff now knew who he was and admired his willingness to see things from their perspective. He wanted to ensure no future manager repeated Greg's abuses. Corporate also rolled out additional oversight policies, requiring monthly audits of tip distribution. One late afternoon, as the diner hummed with the after-work crowd, a tall figure in a dark hoodie entered. Anna, clearing a table, caught sight of him from the corner of her eye. Her blood ran cold, the posture, the gait. It was Greg Tuttle. She recognized him instantly. He kept his face partially covered, scanning the diner with a menacing glare. Then he spotted her. Before she could react, he strode up, voice hissing, "We need to talk." Anna's heart hammered. She fumbled for her phone. No one else seemed to notice yet. Tension crackled in the air. Was he about to do something drastic? Fear paralyzed Anna for a split second. She glimpsed David near the counter, conversing with Meredith. If she could just signal him. But Greg seized her wrist, leaning in close. "You think you won, snitch? I lost my job, my reputation, everything. Because of your lies." She yanked her hand free, stepping back. "They weren't lies. You stole from us." He sneered, stepping forward menacingly. "I swear you'll regret crossing me." Anna's heart pounded. She mustered courage. "You can't scare me anymore. We have proof. The police already know about your threats." Greg's face twisted with rage. "Proof, schmoof, corporate scum. You're just a worthless waitress." He raised his hand as if to strike her, but in that instant, David appeared behind him, grabbing his arm mid-swing. "That's enough, Greg," David growled. "You're trespassing. Get out or face arrest." Greg whirled around, shock and hate in his eyes. "Langford, you set me up. You think you can keep me down?" David's voice dropped dangerously. "Touch her again, and you'll spend the night in jail, or worse." He nodded to the staff, who quickly phoned security. For a tense moment, Greg seemed poised to fight. But seeing no escape, he spat on the floor in disgust, then stormed out. Shaken, Anna sagged into David's arms, tears welling. The diner erupted in concern. Customers stared. Staff rushed over. David guided Anna to a seat, gently rubbing her back as she trembled. The older hostess offered her water. David's private security arrived moments later, searching the area, but Greg was already gone. How did he slip in unnoticed? Anna asked, voice quivering. He could have. She didn't finish the thought. David knelt beside her. "You're safe now. He won't get away with this." He glanced at his security detail. "Alert the police. Let's file another report. Request a restraining order." Anna nodded weakly, grateful for David's presence. She realized she was lucky he intervened. Her mind reeled at the possibility of Greg harming her physically. That man's hatred knew no bounds. Staff members tried to console Anna, reaffirming their solidarity. David privately fumed at the near assault. This was a breach of safety he couldn't tolerate. He decided to intensify protective measures, not only at the diner, but also for Anna personally. She initially resisted the idea of having a guard, but David insisted. "I owe you for your courage. Let me help keep you and your mother safe." With trembling gratitude, Anna accepted. Hard karma had found Greg Tuttle, but he still lurked on the fringes, a wild card. David was determined to close that chapter for good. In the following days, a formal restraining order was filed against Greg Tuttle. The Chicago police took Anna's statement about the attempted assault inside the diner. Combined with the existing theft charges, Greg now faced potential criminal prosecution. David used his resources to ensure the case advanced swiftly. No bribes or backroom deals would let Greg slither away this time. Meanwhile, the diner thrived under new leadership. Customers picked up on the improved morale. Regulars commented on the warmer atmosphere. Business soared, ironically boosting the location's profitability. David felt a sense of renewed pride each time he visited. One morning, Anna finally decided to apply for the company's medical assistance program. She scheduled a meeting with HR, who promptly approved partial coverage for her mother's medication and specialist visits. Overwhelmed, Anna thanked David profusely. "You changed our lives," she whispered, tears glistening. He shook his head gently. "You changed your own life by standing up for what's right. I just helped remove the obstacles." Their bond deepened into genuine friendship, though rumors circulated that the CEO might be personally invested in her well-being. David paid no mind to the gossip, focusing solely on ensuring Anna and the diner staff had the future they deserved. A month later, the day of Greg Tuttle's hearing arrived. Anna, accompanied by David and a small group of employees who also testified, entered the courtroom with a mix of nerves and determination. The district attorney outlined the charges: harassment, attempted assault, tip theft, and wage violations. Greg's public defender tried painting him as a misunderstood manager, but the mountain of evidence, including Anna's recorded voice memos, sealed the case. When Anna took the stand, she recounted the fear, the intimidation, and the final confrontation. Her voice trembled, but never faltered. The judge, hearing the body of evidence, passed a swift verdict. Greg Tuttle was found guilty of harassment, attempted assault, and misappropriation of funds. He faced fines, restitution to staff, and a short jail sentence. Justice had indeed arrived. After the hearing concluded, Greg was led away in handcuffs, shooting Anna a final glare. She exhaled, relief washing over her. David placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "That's the end of it," he murmured. "You can finally breathe easy." The staff who came embraced Anna in a group hug. She couldn't stop smiling through tears. Hard karma had hit Greg, culminating in the punishment he deserved. And for Anna, it felt like a dawn after the darkest night. With Greg's chapter closed, Anna embraced a new sense of peace. The diner soared under new management, free of tyranny. Customers enjoyed the uplifting atmosphere, staff felt safe, and tip-sharing returned to fairness. David visited less in disguise now. Everyone knew he was the CEO, but they adored him for stepping in personally to protect them. Anna's mother's health improved under the specialized care the Riverside Diner's assistance plan helped fund. Freed from the crippling financial strain, Anna found herself considering the future. Maybe finishing her college education was indeed possible. One day, she confided in David about her old dream of becoming a nutritionist. "I love diners," she laughed shyly, "but I always wanted to help people lead healthier lives. Maybe I can merge that passion with the diner's menu, promoting better meal options." David's eyes lit up. "That's fantastic. Riverside Diner could use a fresh approach to healthy, yet classic comfort food. Let's talk scholarship or tuition reimbursement. We'll support you, Anna. You've earned it." Tears of joy welled in her eyes. She realized that the once lost life path might be restored. The man who started as a mysterious diner patron had become her greatest champion. Indeed, the entire staff now stood behind her, with unwavering camaraderie. Months later, Anna took a bold step, enrolling part-time at a local community college's nutrition science program. David personally congratulated her on the first day, surprising her with a brand new laptop as a small token of encouragement. Overcome, she hugged him, grateful beyond words. Between classes, she continued working at Riverside Diner, slowly implementing more nutritious menu tweaks, like lowering sodium in the soups or offering a fresh salad bar. Customers welcomed the changes, praising the diner's balanced offerings. The brand's image blossomed further. David occasionally reflected on the day he'd first heard Anna crying in the kitchen. It amazed him how a single moment of empathy led to so many profound changes. He was reminded that real leadership meant stepping into the trenches, hearing the quiet tears, and uplifting those who needed it most. As for Anna, each step she took away from fear and toward her dreams felt like a victory not just for herself, but for every staff member who had endured Greg's tyranny. She'd become a beacon of hope within Riverside Diner, living proof that with courage, community, and the right support, even the darkest circumstances could be overcome. And so, the diner thrived, its staff united in purpose. Beneath the neon sign, a warm spirit of belonging shined for all who walked through its doors. Thank you so much for sharing in this heartfelt journey. When David Langford, the undercover CEO, stepped into Riverside Diner, he had no idea how one waitress's quiet tears would transform everything, unearthing hidden injustices, forging new friendships, and proving that true leadership begins with empathy. Together, they dismantled a toxic workplace, brought a ruthless manager to justice, and reignited the dreams of a brave young woman named Anna, who finally found hope for her mother's health and her own future. Their story reminds us that small acts of compassion can spark big change, and that no obstacle is insurmountable when people stand together. If you found this story inspiring or moving, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support enables us to continue creating these drama-filled, uplifting narratives about everyday heroes and the power of kindness. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below on your favorite twist or how you'd handle a toxic boss. Remember to turn on notifications so you never miss our next heartwarming tale. Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned for more.